right, I'm gonna give people one more minute as we've still just got a couple of folks jumping on, but we'll go ahead and get started right away here. And Alina, are you able to keep an eye on the waiting room to make sure anyone who joins a bit late can be admitted?
Katie, you'll have to give her co-host.
Okay, or could you do that, Kat?
Yeah, maybe good idea to give us both co-hosts just in case.
Okay, sounds good.
Thanks.
Where is Alina on this list? All right, with that, I'm just going to go ahead and get us started. So, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for giving us your lunch hour today to join us for this important discussion. Just a bit of a idea of what we're going to be doing over the next hour. We'll do a bit of a session overview and just talk a bit about what brought us here today. But the majority of our time, I really want to spend hearing from you, our members, on your thoughts and ideas and opinions and observations about this issue. We will also be sending out a survey at the end. So if there's something you're not able to say today, we run out of time, or if something comes to you a little bit later, there's also going to be that option to fill out that survey with your thoughts afterwards. Yeah, so just a couple of other friendly reminders here. Please stay on mute unless we call on you to speak, and use the raise hand feature for your spot in line here. So you're just going to wait to be called on by an event host. And then you want to try and keep your comments to 2 minutes or less. If things start to get a little bit lengthy, I'll bring out the timer and I'll cut you off. Just to make sure that we get to hear from a variety of voices today in our session. And we want to make sure that we keep things focused, respectful, and that people are actively participating for a productive session today. So, most of you will know myself. My name is Katie Campbell. I'm the executive director here at the CCI North Alberta chapter. And joining me today to host our discussion is Hugh Willis, who many of you will also know. Hugh is a lawyer with Willis Law here in Edmonton. He's a frequent speaker on condominium issues in Alberta. He's an active volunteer with our chapter, co-chairing our government advocacy committee and helping to represent our chapter at the table with provincial government. He's helps me sit on the condominium stakeholder working group, which meets with Service Alberta staff frequently to chat about different issues in the condominium sector and help to guide their work. He's also a mentor for the Law Society of Alberta for lawyers with condominium law questions. And beyond our discussion today, you're going to have an opportunity to ask Hugh some questions, as well as Todd Shipley and Aaron Burney at our ever popular legal panel following our AGM on October 14th. So if you haven't signed up for our AGM yet, you can find all of the details for that event on our website. So just getting right down to it, why we're here. As many of you are aware, condominium document review services serve an important function in the condo community. And some concerns have emerged from CCI members. I believe a condo manager approached you and brought this up as a potential issue, and he's gathered a bit of initial feedback from folks, and we were both quite surprised at the speed and the depth of the feedback we received on this issue when we asked some members of the community for their thoughts. And this session is really just our goal here is to gather feedback from members in a bit further and explore some solutions and some potential best practices we can promote for this sector to improve our community. So the good, there's a genuine need for these services. And review companies are genuinely helpful to the layperson in clarifying financial and operational health of condos. And many of them deliver professional, helpful summaries for buyers. And uh, the question that kind of led us here, so Hugh sent out a survey to some of his contacts in the industry, and this is kind of what the question looked like. Um, and we received some interesting feedback. So just a little bit of a summary of that feedback. Some of the issues that were reported to us by our members. Number one, condominium document review companies overstepping kind of their boundaries and their role and what they're asking from condo managers and boards. So we're seeing things like requests for guarantees that there's not going to be any special levies, information on what kind of future decisions might be happening, and even people asking for editing of past board minutes, which we were quite surprised to hear about. One of the issues that has been brought to our attention repeatedly is the lack of standards in the industry. There's currently no licensing, certification, or formal training required to participate in this industry. And that's concerning given the high degree of influence that viewers' opinions are having on these major financial decisions people are making when they're choosing whether or not to purchase a condominium. We also heard a bit of confusion for buyers, with some services being marketed as sufficient for lender approval and outdated or inaccurate reviews leading to increased buyer risk. And then we also heard from condo managers in particular that it's becoming an increasing administrative burden on them, time spent responding to sometimes quite aggressive reviewer requests for additional information. Hugh, is there anything else that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head for the most part. When we first started this, the pace and the depth of the responses caught us off guard. From my perspective, viewing it through my lens as a lawyer, when I hear volunteer board members are being contacted asking for guarantees, or managers are being asked to make edits to past minutes, that drives all sorts of liability. And when a transaction falls through, we're hearing that maybe there's some suggestion the buyer was fully informed, and the transaction fell through, and then the seller was furious at the board and the manager for the corporation is being poorly run. Well, no, it's not. The person, according to the manager, didn't quite understand what was happening in the minutes, but then it's the current board and the manager that take all the abuse. So, but we also heard there's some really good companies out there. We thought that what we would do is have this session, see if we can't start driving to some best practices. I think it's highly unlikely that we will see any government intervention for licensing or regulation of doc review companies at any time in the near future, 5 years or less. So I think what it does is it falls back to industry to see if we can't brainstorm some solutions. So in addition to today's session, my thought would be to reach out to some conveyancing lawyers who do residential real estate sales, get their experience, as well as reach out to one of the real estate organizations here in the province and get their 2 cents as well, and see if we can collaborate and get some best practices, some solutions to the problem before it tilts over the wrong way. Also, I'll add one other thing. I had one party email me a doc review company that appeared to be using AI that attempted to summarize the entire corporation affairs into like one sentence. And yikes. So, but let's hear from the group. You're muted, Katie.
Oh, there we go. let's go ahead and open it up to discussion. So if you'd have something to say on this, please go ahead and raise your hand. We're going to divide this kind of into two parts here. We're going to first talk about some of the common challenges people are experiencing. And let me just have a look at the time here. We're at about 12:11. So we'll give 25 minutes to that. And then we're going to move on to talk about what people think some of the solutions are here. So let's go ahead and get started. Who would like to go ahead and speak? Please use the raise hand function. And
I think there's a fellow named Ken there that has his hand up on the
I meant the raise hand function on Zoom, but raising your hand in real life will work too. So why don't you go ahead, Ken?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Manner and venue, section 31, unless corporation bylaws expressly provide otherwise, a person entitled to attend a meeting of the corporation or of the board of directors may attend a meeting by electronic means. And then section 1J2 defines electronic. Other than a corporation's bylaws directing how meetings of the corporation are to be held, are there any exceptions to a corporation holding a meeting by electronic means? A corporation I'm aware of says, well, we only had one person attending previously, or only one person asking to attend, and it costs a lot of money to have a meeting virtually. According to my understanding of legislation, there's no excuses for not having a meeting provided to the owners electronic means.
So how would this affect document review?
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, it's the legislation document review for the legislation. Are we talking about the review of the legislation?
No, what we're talking about is in a purchase and sale of a unit.
Okay.
There's third-party companies that take the minutes, the reserve fund study, the bylaws, the information statement, and they review it to determine and help inform owners the state of affairs of the condominium corporation.
Okay.
And then what they do is they give an opinion to the buyer or the realtor, and then that can lead to further questions, or it can lead to the sale being, hey, this is great, this is what I thought, this is what I want to buy. Or, essentially where the intent of the document review companies is to have a more informed purchaser. But there was just some practices that were creeping up that we started to hear about that were starting to go a little bit too far. So that's what the purpose of today would be, is looking at those document reviews. But your question there, I think what I would encourage you to do is pop to the AGM where there's a legal panel and you'll be able to get 2 or 3 different perspectives on that question.
Thank you.
Carissa, I see you put your hand up.
I heard that in the preamble editing past meeting minutes. Is that part of this today?
Yeah, that was one of the feedbacks we heard. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Board, I was part of a board where the corporation or the owners took the board to court with regards to minutes being amended without having them processed with their Robert's Rules of Order newly revised. So, and I know it's happening again in the corporation I'm involved with.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Carissa?
So, yeah, Katie, you can be the
Yeah, I'll be the calling on the people that have their hands up on the list here.
Wonderful. Thanks, Katie. Okay, well, I'll kick things off then, I guess, from a document review perspective here. I do have a little bit of a list. So how many things did you want me to hit on here, Hugh? Just like 1 or 2 right now and then re-raise my hand later? Or
Sure. Do as many as you can. And then by all means, if we need to, if you want to send an email after as well,
sure.
that would be great. But to help facilitate the discussion, love to have your thoughts.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be a part of this discussion. Actually, I was thinking about reaching out in some way, shape, or form to try to figure out, is there a way that we can regulate our industry? So just for context for the folks that are on here, I am a document review analyzer myself, But I do have a background. I come with 10 years experience as an actual property manager, like a condominium manager. I'm a condominium owner. I've sat on board of directors. So I see things from so many different perspectives of the condominium realm. So it's kind of interesting to see things from all these different perspectives. But anyways, that just gives you a little bit of context. So some of the things that I'm seeing as a document analyzer, fortunately for me, I've had the privilege of sneaking a peek at some of my competitors' reports. Some of my clients have shared their past reports and stuff with me. And I have to say that I am mortified at some of the reports that I see out there. Not that I want to pump my own tires or anything, but it makes me feel pretty good about the report that we do put out at my company. But I'm really mortified for our industry to see some of the standards that are being used from some of our competitors, from people within our industry. So I think that there definitely needs to be some regulation around how our reports need to be kind of formatted. Hugh kind of talked about AI. That is one thing that I'm finding very interesting right now. With some of these AI programs claiming to do a document review. Summarizing things in one sentence, perhaps not thorough enough. But again, some of the reports that I'm seeing, not user friendly. So our customers would definitely look at them and go, like, what am I looking at here? Like, what are you trying to tell me? Like, they're just not getting a good picture, a good summary, because most of these people, they don't know anything about condos. So it's our job to educate them in a way that helps them to understand what it is that they're looking at. What are the good points? What are the bad points? What things that should they be cautioned on? Or what are some of the good points about these, the condominium that we're looking at? And so AI is one thing that, I don't want to poo-poo on it, but I don't feel like it is reliable enough yet to do a full document review. And it doesn't have the experience either to back it up. For analyzers who have experience in the industry, we can see some things and perhaps be able to read into that a little bit further, going, hey, I've experienced that before. I've seen that exact same circumstance before. I can kind of not necessarily predict, but I've seen ways that it can go either good or bad in those situations. And we can speak from experience and share those with our clients. So I think that's certainly important. One thing that I'm a little bit disappointed on with the latest changes that came out in the Government Act and how they now nicely lay out all the, well, and they did before too, but can I provide some examples rather than general statements? Sure, I'll do my best. But yeah, insurance appraisal is one thing that is not on the list that has come out within the Government Act or the government regulations as a required document to provide. And this is something that's really important. It's now become necessary within the Act. With at least every 2 years, a corporation has to review their coverages and make sure that they're staying on top of, is their insurance policy properly covered? And so as an analyzer, that's one thing that I love to look at. Most places will provide that, but because it's not in the Act, some of them say, oh, it's not in the Act, so therefore we're not providing it. And so then I can't look at it. But it certainly is a wonderful tool to be able to make sure that they are properly insured. So we can look at the appraised value, look at what's actually on their policy and go, are they properly covered? Because if they're not, we all know what that means, right? If something were to happen, water, hail, whatever, the building gets destroyed and then they go to rebuild it and they're not covered, well, then it's the owners that get cash called, or they get called upon to crack open their wallets and to have to cover for what that shortage is. And so that's important for buyers to be able to know and understand that. So that's just one thing I've noticed. And then
I'm
two
sorry,
other little
I'm
points.
just going to go ahead and cut you off there, unfortunately, because we just have quite a few people with their hands up, and we've got limited time here. So thank you so much for that feedback. That was really good.
I'll pop my hand up later if there's another opportunity.
Sure, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Susan, I believe you were next on my list here.
Okay. as a manager of a condominium management company and as the owner of it, we are the people that actually provide these documents on behalf of the board. So I just kind of want to speak to our personal experience with this. Um, First off, how common is it? Well, I would say at this point, we've probably got about a 40% average of those that have undertaken with a document review client. So it's still, I think, a growing industry as far as that's concerned, because that has increased over the last few years. What we are seeing is quite often with a handful of these document review analysts, whatever you want to call them, there's really just a handful. They are extremely aggressive. They have, in some cases, created some friction between a realtor and a prospective buyer who's reading these things, certainly a realtor and the vendor of the units. There's been some conflict. Um, the aggression that comes to our office can be really uncalled for. And it indicated to me, we've had a few of these, that these people really don't truly understand the manager's role to start with, because, you know, we're the ones that do everything wrong. So there is that format as well. And I am aware of one concern with an individual who had document reviews done, demanded the guarantees for no special assessments. They had already undertaken several of those and had some work to do. So, you know, there was conversation about loans and special assessments. It went far enough that the owner of the unit in question filed a complaint with RECA against the manager and the board of directors. Um, how that wound up, I think that's a whole other thing, different conversation. But nonetheless, I mean, it really didn't go very far, obviously, because you cannot guarantee the future. So, you know, that's some of the extreme levels that this has gone to. And again, I want to stress that this has really only been a handful of these document review people that are involved in this kind of behavior. The other thing I want to bring to the fore with this is, although managers are quite often the people that will provide these documents, it isn't always the case. In some self-managed condominiums, it is the board themselves who, again, are a board of volunteers. In other cases, even if the management company were to issue those documents, it's not necessarily the condominium manager that's doing it. They often have document people that do nothing but. So if they're questioned about these things, how does that document review person within a management office answer any questions? You know, it just becomes a little bit ridiculous. They then rely on the managers. And yes, it has become a bit of a burden to managers in our office to continually answer these review questions from these handful of companies. Normally, if we are asked any questions, we can respond. It's all very reasonable, but sometimes it goes a little bit beyond. That's all my
Thank you,
comment
Susan.
is.
All right, next we have Chantel.
Hi there. So thank you for putting on this presentation. So a couple things that I wanted to mention. So I have a friend that's buying a condo. She called me yesterday and she said, so I know they did a major project. All of the information avoided that major project. Um, the financials that were provided were from 2021, so that's not helpful. Everything was prior to the project being completed, and there was no mention of that. So it's very difficult for people to be able to make informed decisions if they're not getting the most current information. And so if they're not doing the like, I don't know why more accurate audited financial statements haven't been provided, but that was shocking to me that you would give 4-year-old information and think that's acceptable in a document review. Also, I'm a reserve fund planner, so obviously these reports are critical in the discussion of document reviews, and I don't know that enough time has been spent on reviewing these documents. And I know one of my clients recently just put my report through AI. Thank you. Really love that. so helpful. I love it, love it. So putting my content out there is great. Um, but the response that I got back, so this is what the manager sent back to me, was this is what AI's response was to your report and the changes that need to be made. So I don't think that's a fair impression should be done for these documents either, because I don't think that AI has the knowledge that it's looking for, and what it picked apart in the report was really, really quite silly, actually. When you actually read into it. So it seemed like it was kind of a cool thing to do, but in reality, it didn't give any pertinent information that would. So I would be careful in using the AI in things that are more technical, because I don't think the data is there. That's really all I wanted to say, is that I would make sure that the providers that are preparing the reserve funds, particularly for more complicated reports, have that professional backing to make sure that all of those costs are incorporated into the reserve funds and that they're not, potentially underfunded.
Thanks,
Okay, that's
Chantel.
all. Okay.
All right, next on my list, I have Teresa.
Hi, thank you. I'm going to lower my hand now. Carissa, first of all, I want to make a comment. Yes, I am totally in agreement with you on that insurance appraisal. And in fact, I'm going to add that to our information document request form, because I don't believe that we're, required to follow the act, in the sense that if an owner wants a document, especially an appraiser, that I'm happy to hand it over. So I'm going to add that in. And if people want it, yes, we will give it to you. And I never thought of that before you mentioned that, but absolutely. Like, I always check the insurance certificate against the appraisal every year. So they do match up, but I'm also very familiar with the issues that can arise. So good. Like I said, we're going to add that to our new form. I feel like I'm fortunate that I have not had the opportunity to deal with some of these messes that you guys are talking about. My biggest frustrations is I get emails from the condo doc readers, and they ask stuff that is literally in the documents that I've sent them. And so my response to them, and I'm not sure if I'm being a little snarky, but I'm like, it's literally in, like the stuff that's, I have to put out, that's in the balance sheet, that's in this, that's in this. And so I sometimes wonder, I'm like, why am I doing your job if literally the information that you have asked me for is in the documents? And I think if I was to ever be asked that question to guarantee, I would simply refuse. We
As you
can't
should.
guarantee the future.
As you should refuse it, 100%.
Yeah, absolutely refuse. You're right. I don't want to be held liable on that, on either direction. So yeah, that's it. I didn't have many more comments than that, but I'm grateful for this. Thank you. This is when I retire from condo management, I do want to look at condo doc rating. And I think, like Carissa, the years managing condos gives you a lot of insight as to what to look for. I guess I'm still a few years away from that though.
Thanks so much.
Thanks.
Okay, next on my list, I have Leslie.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm a reviewer, and I would have to say that one of the biggest challenges that we've had several times is that we get documents that once we review them all in a larger picture, they don't actually all make sense. So I can get a financial statement as of a certain, date, certain month end or something like that, or year end, and it'll have the balance of the reserve fund at, say, $400,000. And then I'll get an information statement that says it's $600,000 for the same period of time. So I'm not asking for reiteration of what's in the documents. I'm actually asking for clarification of what's actually accurate. And I did have this happen probably 2 weeks ago. I had the information statement say one thing. The financial information was $200,000 different. And then they had just completed a reserve fund study for a start date at that same period of time. So I had three things for the same period of time. And the start balance in the reserve fund study was $4,000. So what I would like to see is some accountability for providing accurate information. I wouldn't have to ask for clarification if the information that we were provided actually made sense. and actually went together. So when we get these template emails from management companies that say, we can't offer any interpretation based on, what information that's already been put out there. Okay, that's fine, but I don't need an accountant to help me read a financial statement that clearly states what the balance of the reserve fund is. I don't need another person to help me clarify what the line on the information statement says. I can read, I don't need the reserve fund study provider to help me clarify what's the starting balance in the reserve fund study. This is clear information, but it's clarification that's required, not interpretation. So when we get these automatic emails from management companies that say, we're not even going to look at what you're asking because we've provided you this information, well, that doesn't help us. And it's the same thing. We've had it happen when we notice there's errors on an information statement where the legal unit number is wrong or the unit factors are wrong or something on there, something specific that is actually an error that just simply needs to be clarified. And we don't ask for that because we're not the ones who paid for the information statement, so it's not for us to do. But we just need clarification. We need confirmation that what we think to be correct is actually valid.
And do you
And
find, sorry, if I could jump in, Leslie, do you find it's the reserve fund interplay with the minutes and financials that's the most common area of error?
um,
Or
what's
one of the
difficult?
more common areas? Like,
Well, the reserve fund, yeah, I mean, it's generally, I mean, we don't very often get numbers at the exact same period of time that, what the reserve fund study providers say they have received. But, where the minutes come in is, are they doing what's recommended in the reserve fund study? When it comes to things like that, that's kind of what we're looking for as well. And, when the minutes are skimpy or not there at all, in many cases, that becomes very difficult as well. And that's another question where these meetings are not recorded or they're not recorded well, that leads to questions. And how do you verify? Like, how do you say, yeah, this board's doing what they're supposed to be doing when you have nothing to go on with that? And so this information that's being put out, I think, if there's going to be accountability to put on a reviewer to say, okay, yes, read what you're given, and we do. But when what we're given is creating questions, I think there has to be some accountability for clarification as well. I don't need to be told that if I don't understand it, I should get an expert to tell me how to read it. I don't think that's an appropriate response. But at the same time, if you were giving me something that would, make sense, there wouldn't be this issue.
sure.
So that's something that comes up quite a lot where we notice things like that. And, I personally have never asked anybody to change minutes. I've never asked anybody to fix anything, do it, like I would always just say to my customer, hey, this information statement is wrong. Whoever paid for it, make sure you get the corrected document or something like that.
And then it'd be a part of the next session, but I'd like you to jump back in. Hearing that there are other providers who are bad apples. When we get to the next section here, I'd love to hear your thoughts on sort of suggestions and solutions to address some of the bad
Okay.
actors as well.
Okay. And I'll just say quickly as well, the other comments that were made about AI. So far, I do agree it's nowhere near where it would need to be an appropriate option for a doc review. And yes, especially for an engineering report or something like that. But I will give you an example. We did do a test with a AI company that we had, we submitted a review to them that we had done and we took out all the, information, that would identify anything. And they actually came up with errors, not just misinterpretation, but errors. And one of them was that this particular property did not have an age restriction, but AI said they did have an age restriction and it was 18 plus. So I looked at it and I thought, how the heck did I miss that? And I didn't. But what AI picked up was that you needed to be at minimum 18 years old to vote at a meeting. And they picked it up as an age restriction for that property. So you have to be very careful. AI is not close to being where it needs to be at. And definitely not for interpretation or analysis of
Yeah.
anything like that. So I'm in agreement with those comments that have been passed already about that.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank
So
you.
I have John next. He hasn't been able to figure out the Zoom raise hand function, but has messaged me saying he wants to raise his hand. So John, go ahead. And then we'll have you next, Carrie, after John.
Don't let my not knowing how to raise my hand reflect on, who I am. Yeah, my name is John. I guess we do condo document reviews as part of our business, but we have a professional appraisal office, and we do reserve fund reports and insurance appraisals and condominium consulting and a wide range of services working with condos primarily. And what I've found, I guess the reason that I wanted to participate in this meeting is I saw that there were there's serious problems, and that's why we started offering this service. My experience is not some of the points that were made, for example, saying that reviewers are aggressive or things like that. I know I've been accused of that. But I've been accused for it while I'm asking for a current financial statement or something like that, like fairly simple or robust routine matters. And what I found is that there's probably similar to the review companies out there, there's sort of a wide range of sophistication of who we're requesting documents from. So it can go from a volunteer board to, a hyper professional management company, and everything in between. And so, in many cases, we'll be provided with information that's incomplete at the onset. I know for sure I've been asked fairly frequently or told the phrase actually Leslie used about interpretation, that managers are using this a phrase that they aren't to interpret information, but I'll often hear that in response to my request for, I'll say, for example, the information statement is dated for 7 months ago. It should be current. And then I'll receive that statement back. We can't interpret the documents. And I think, well, I think that the main point I'd like to make is that I think that there has to be some engagement on both sides of the aisle, I guess. So I think that as when we do these reviews, how I look at it is somebody's coming to me and I provide that potential purchaser or seller, if they're trying to get it done beforehand. I give them the opportunity to be well informed or to perform as a well-informed person, because we have a fairly good understanding of the workings of condos, the financials. We have a unique insight for sure into how reserve funds work because I spend the other majority of my time writing them. So we give them that opportunity. And what I find is when I ask a reasonable question, oftentimes I'm met with animosity in many cases. And usually it's, something like I think Leslie had mentioned, if there's discrepancies between financials and whatnot. So I think there's some work to be done there, because I know that in most cases, for our company anyway, we're doing our best to do a great job for our client to make them well informed, and certainly we've had some really positive outcomes for many of our clients for sure, and helped them in many cases. So anyway, that's really what I've found is that it for sure goes both ways, and it would be great if there was I suppose a better understanding on both sides of what a potential buyer is entitled to. So I think that in many cases the list is not interpreted correctly. For example, something like a current reserve fund balance will be interpreted as the last audited balance, which may be 11 months ago. And that doesn't make sense, right? I mean, you can intuitively say to yourself, well, if I'm buying something and it takes 30 years to save up money in a reserve fund, I'd like to know what it is today because it takes one day to spend it. It's just one check. So, but we'll get lots of blowback on that. For engineering reports, I mean, I know that condos are required to retain them permanently. And I'll look at them and say, well, I see it there. I mean, I see evidence of it. And then we'll just, it just won't be disclosed. And And that makes it really challenging for a buyer to evaluate their potential liabilities for sure. So I think that I could probably leave it there. I could talk about this stuff forever because I'm really interested in it, obviously, but
Thanks
Well,
for your.
you think you hit the nail on the head. Is that's what we're trying to do today is just develop some best practices. I like the way you described it on both sides of the aisle on it. So, yeah.
Carrie.
Hi. Okay. So I have been on both sides of this. I worked as a condo manager for almost 10 years and then took a little break and did document reviews before getting back into condo management. And I have a couple of different perspectives on this. And I guess my main concern that we deal with a lot, in the act when it talks about the documents that are provided, it talks about the annual financial statements. So not necessarily audited financials, but the annual financials. So for year end, and that is what we provide to to the owners to give to their potential purchaser, and we get it all the time where the document review companies want the most recent monthly financials, and those are not audited. There are times when when we go back a month later to make some adjustments based on board feedback. So what I've had to do, because I don't want to take on the liability of giving out the monthly financial statement without board approval, I've had my boards actually make a motion whether or not they want the monthly financials released. And it's about 50-50. Um, all my boards where I have an accountant for a treasurer, they don't want to release the monthly financials. And so I just refer back that the board has not approved for the release of them. And that's where I find that um, some of the document review companies get very, very aggressive, demanding that we have to give them that information. And I just always refer back to the act. But um, I think if under financials is where we're finding probably the most pushback. And then there are some green document reviewers out there that you can tell when they ask the questions, they have no idea how to read, how to put the puzzle together between the minutes and the reserve fund study. Um, for instance, we had a building where their roof started to leak, and it needed to be replaced about 8 years ahead of what the reserve fund study said. So their reserve fund was off by $350,000 because they had to do that major capital repair. Um, but it was in the minutes. It was very clear that the roof had to be done early. And had this document reviewer actually read and paid attention to the minutes, they would have not had to call me and be demanding why the reserve fund study was off by $350,000. So, um, and then just another note, I'm currently just finishing up my second term on the RECA Industry Council and Board of Directors, and we have talked about this issue at the Industry Council level. And I agree with you. This is not on the government's radar right now, but I'm hoping that the new Industry Council for RECA will continue to just monitor this, and at some point, maybe government advocacy for CCI can work um, with RECA to um, push this and get it on the government's radar, because I think it's an industry that's just going to get bigger and bigger, and I would love to see document reviewers have to have some sort of experience or some sort of training before they can do this. It's a very unique industry, and it's like putting a puzzle together, and if you don't have all the pieces or you don't understand them, it can make it difficult.
Where they can participate.
Thanks so much, Carrie.
Over 20 restaurants.
Oh, somebody needs to mute. There we go. Okay, let's go ahead and move on to the second part of our discussion here, recognizing we don't have much time left in our session. And that is, what are your ideas and solutions for some of these current problems? What are some of the best practices that we can be sharing? What could make the industry more effective? And where should CCI be focusing its advocacy efforts on this issue? So again, please go ahead and raise your hand if you have some thoughts to share on this.
Sure, and I'll just summarize some of the feedback we've heard thus far. So there's some numerous comments that document review companies are getting stuff that boards should be providing, and they're simply not. There's old documents, there's out-of-date documents. So we have some board education aspect from the board perspective. Then we've got feedback from the other side that says we've got some of the document review providers who, quite frankly, I suspect are not on the call today, but are out there in the industry themselves, not doing the understanding the issue as well as they should have, or doing the deep dive into the documents that they possibly could. So again, what are the solutions? What do you see? What would a good document review company, what should you be doing? What would a good document review company like to ask boards or managers to do? What would boards or managers like to ask good document review companies? What sort of requests or feedback would you guys like to highlight?
Don't all start speaking at once here. Anybody want to share some thoughts on this? Carissa.
Sure, I'll go ahead and I guess start the conversation. Thank you. Yeah, so for just a starting comment, it does bother me as a document review analyzer that there's getting to be this negative feedback in and amongst our industry. I want us to be revered in a very high regard, because what we do is very important. We have a big responsibility, with our clients to read these documents and to provide them with feedback on them. Now, we have to be careful, though. One thing that I think Hugh can probably attest to as a lawyer is we have to be careful as a review analyzer not to overstep on our opinions and the information that we share. We are there as an analyzer, so we are there to reveal what's in the documents and share what our findings are. Opinions are not necessarily a part of our job fully, so we need to be careful how far we go with that. So that perhaps needs to be a standard that we need to think about in the future, because I wonder how many analyzers are providing their opinion on, oh, you should buy this place or you shouldn't buy this place for these reasons. That's not our job. We're there to provide them with the tools so they can make an educated decision. So that's one thing. I do agree that some of the analyzers out there are being deemed as aggressive, and that's unfortunate because it does put a bad light on the other ones who are doing a good job and approaching with a very respectful tone and with appropriateness. So I agree fully, wholeheartedly here that perhaps we need to come up with a bit of a list of when is it appropriate to contact the management companies and when is it not. So for guarantees, as an example, yes, of course, like that is not something that we should be asking for. Absolutely. And if anybody, if they were asking for a guarantee, then that tells me they don't understand what it's like to manage a condominium, because things can change from day to day. You can't make any guarantees on stuff because something can change tomorrow. And even though you guarantee today that there's no cash call, something could drastically change tomorrow, and that could change the whole scope. But one thing that I would like to see on that same thread, in terms of appropriateness, when is it okay to contact a manager? We had talked about some errors in documents. To me, I think it's okay to contact an association, or I would like to see it be okay to contact an association to say, I believe I may have found an inconsistency in the documents. Can you please help me to verify what is correct, and approach it in that sort of a light? I would love to see on the thread of insurance appraisals, I would love to see us be able to at least ask the question, can we please obtain an insurance appraisal? So just going back to that. If they say no, then it's not in the act right now. I think we have to back down and not be aggressive and push it any further, but I'd love to be able to at least request it. For me, I do when I know I have a good relationship with certain management companies or certain boards, and they're usually very willing to hand over that information, but from time to time, I don't. I do agree. There was a couple of ladies that were on here that had talked about lack of minutes. And so here's a suggestion that I would like to put forth on that. This is something that I've been doing. Sometimes I get a yes, and sometimes I get a go pound sand answer, and that is totally fine. But at least I asked the question. Sometimes when we don't get any minutes or we have a huge gap, perhaps there's been 8 months or a year since the association has, or that the board of directors has met last, and we have nothing to go off of. And the client is asking, well, what kind of things has the corporation been doing? And of course, we don't have any minutes to go off of. Then sometimes what I do is either ask for a written statement of any items of interest from the past year, or offer to have a quick telephone conversation with whoever the contact is, just so that they can share with me, oh, okay, well, you know, we've been working on some windows and doors. We've been doing this. We've been doing that. We've been investing some of our money a little bit differently. Oh, great. Okay. So then I'll quickly make note of the highlights and share those with the client in the report. So I realize that sometimes that puts a little bit of extra work onto the associations. But again, if they're not providing us with any minutes and we have nothing to go off of, then the poor client has a big gap of lacking information there, which puts, you know, again, we're there to provide the tools needed for them to purchase a place. And that's just lacking one of the tools, right? You know, a very important tool. So that's just one thing that I've done. And what was the last thing I wanted to?
Just while you're looking at that, I think it's also important to remember that under the Act, boards have 10 days to provide the documents. But
Yes.
in most real estate transactions, the 10-day, or it's usually a 7 or 10-day condition period for the purchaser, right?
Yeah.
So there's some overlap there as well, where by the time the purchaser needs to make the decision, the board is well within their time frame set out in the Act to provide the information. But you know, there's just some overplay or just another features or nuance to the discussion as well. Like, sorry to interrupt.
Of course. No, by all means. Yeah, I think those are kind of the highlights of some of the things. Let me see, what else did I have? Lacking minutes, aggression. Oh, financials was the other thing. Yeah, I agree with the one lady who's in a similar boat as myself, where she has experience as a condo manager, also has experience as a document analyzer. And so when you're in the analyzer's shoes and you get a package in front of you where let's say that their year end, just due to the timing, your year-end audit financials that are provided are quite old now. So you're looking at something, let's say that we're in September. Let's say it was 8 months ago. It was their audited financials, or close to a year ago. And it's like, golly, a lot can change in that time. So for me, I love being able to see a set of monthly financials, just because it is so beneficial to see what were they doing 8 months ago, but what does it look like now? Has anything significantly changed? And sometimes the answer is yes. And sometimes we can see things on there that there certainly wasn't 8 months ago, 10 months ago, 12 months ago, as an example. But yes, there are some styles of accounting out there where they, at the year end, or perhaps the next month, like the one lady was saying, where they could be making changes along the way. So perhaps we could request financials. But, you know, I like her suggestion. Perhaps it's up to the boards, you know, whether they're comfortable releasing their financials, or perhaps they could put like a draft or in progress or subject to change, or some sort of a disclaimer on there that the information could potentially change as the year goes on. It's not set in stone necessarily, but at least it gives us something to kind of look at in terms of reserve fund bank balances, even though they're supposed to put that on the information statement, but not all associations are providing that. But just seeing what they're spending, was looking like. Where are they putting their money towards? Has there been anything interesting going on, with regards to their spending that we can extract out of there and those sort of
Thanks
things.
so much, Carissa. We've got a couple of other people who would like
I
to.
was just wrapping up. Thank you.
Yeah,
That was my
thank you.
last point. So yeah, the monthly financials would be a great one if we can find a way to grab them. So
Okay.
thank you so much. I appreciate
John, you
that.
had something to add.
Sure. I think that like the problem of what a condo document review even is, I think is an interesting question. That's not necessarily answered the same way by everyone who completes a review, by everyone who orders a review, or everyone who reads the review eventually. I don't know that I don't know that there's a common question being answered in the first place, and I think that that can tend toward some inconsistent results. So as you can imagine, if everybody's asking a different question on a complicated matter, you'll get infinity different types of answers. So I think one thing is if regulation of who can perform a condo doc review is not necessarily in the picture, that likely a reasonable solution is probably education for boards and managers, specifically on how this process works, or how it's intended to work. So when they, I know for sure, and as I said, we deal with a wide range of sophistication, right? So this is not, I guess, I know that lots of times the information and documents that are to be disclosed that are prescribed in legislation, that list is not well understood. And I get that often. So I think that some education on that to really, even if there is a webinar series or something like that that says this is what an information statement does, this is its function in simple terms, so that people understand, why it's important to say, to get that information current, or to say things. Chris, I think you were talking about insurance appraisal, but I think you can ask for that under Section M of the in 20.52 under the information documents, for example. Like you can ask for those things, right? Those are reports that will be completed by a professional that you may be entitled to. I think really that lots of the things in the list, like even the monthly financial statements, for sure, I don't see it in there, and it does say annual financial statements. I've asked for sure in the past, and mostly just to say, well, is there money in the operating account or not? Because it's a corporation is very much like a business, and if I was buying shares in it, I really would like to know that there's money in the bank, and it's really what it boils down to. Anyway, I think that I think is the main point I would put across is that that's what I found, is that the prescribed information is not well understood. Like the difference between what a reserve fund report is and an annual reserve fund report is not well understood, or the significance of the significance of the difference between a written demand or actions against a corporation or judgments against them, things like that. There are details I think that for sure are on my end. They are I guess I'll just say I certainly can be accused of being anal about those things. But they all carry significance. Each item carries significance, and then oftentimes when I end up in confrontations or conflicts, it's generally because I'm trying to get somebody, like a statement out of a corporation, to say there are no unsatisfied judgments or something like that. So I think that would be useful. Yeah, just some education on the other end.
Thanks so much, John. And thanks so much for everybody for joining us for a very useful and I think productive discussion today with some very thoughtful responses. I did re-enter the Survey Monkey link in the chat. If you haven't had a chance to see that, we'll also be emailing it out to everybody who signed up for the session today. Again, thank you so much for all of your thoughtful responses. I understand some people may have to go right on the dot at 1 o'clock, and if that's you, go ahead. But otherwise, I'm going to turn it over to Leslie to close us out here with her thoughts.
All right. So I just wanted to say, I mean, I do agree with what the last couple of speakers have said. There's definitely, when it comes to the financial information, there is usually a gap of a year in what we've received and what's current. And if we don't receive what's current, that's a big space of information that we need to fill in with minutes that we don't have, or, other things. And especially when the information statements are not completed properly, they don't have everything on them that they're supposed to have, that makes it difficult as well too. So definitely being able to ask for a monthly financial statement would fill in a lot of gaps. Like John said, like, do they have money in their operating account? Everything is not about the reserve fund. It's a big part of everything, but can they function operationally is another part of it as well too. So those monthly financial statements would be very helpful. And when it comes to getting information, it was suggested, make a phone call and do that. And we've done that as well too, and we've had some success with that. But we've also found that you need to be careful who you're having that phone call with, because assistants, for instance, are not allowed to give out, so they shouldn't be having these conversations. They shouldn't be giving out certain information. And I've had conversations with receptionists at some of these companies. They're like, oh yeah, this is going on, this is going on. And it's great because it's more information than we had before, but you have to take that with a grain of salt. Just because you were provided with that doesn't mean that that information came from the right place. So that's something to consider. We have also said, you know what, we're not getting a response from the management company because we're a third party. We don't have a vested interest in that. They don't have to talk to us. They're going to talk to owners only. And they've told us that. So we've even gone to the point to say, okay, we cannot get anything from this company. This is important information. These are important questions that need to be answered. Can you please tell the seller, get the selling agent, the seller, to confirm with the management company that they're allowed to answer our questions on their behalf? Because otherwise, what we've done is we've said, okay, here, ask these questions. And they don't know why we're asking. They don't know the importance of it or anything. So they're going to get an answer that maybe is helpful or not. But we even went to the point of one time having the seller put in writing to the management company, yes, answer these questions. And they still ignored it. They still would not do it. So it becomes very difficult to fill in the gaps. Phone calls, yeah, they do. We've definitely had some help with that, but not always. And especially when it comes, for things that happen in that year of missing information, there could be a major project. They could have got an engineering report for some major thing that happened, and we just want more information, like what came of it? Was it a structural issue? That's an important thing to know. And just because it's not provided doesn't mean it's not relevant. So I think there needs to be some consideration made to that as well when those questions are asked. And we've even had people say when it comes to getting the financials, oh, the audit's not done yet. They can't give it to you, or they haven't had an audit in a couple of years. Well, it doesn't have to be audited, and there again, that's some misinterpretation about what actually should be provided. So, there's everywhere you turn, there's, some way of, somebody saying, oh, we can't provide you with this information, or we can't clarify this. So it would be nice if we were able to ask for balance sheets and things like that, because they would be very helpful. So
if I could jump in, Katie, some really good responses, everybody. I think we have to continue doing some work on this because certainly we're hearing that requests can be made. At the same time, they're requests. The obligations are set out in the act. There might be obligations in the bylaws, but a request can be made, and a corporation or a manager may be perfectly entitled to say no as well, right? So we have to try and find the right balance between the best practices. And I think there's been some really good examples. The engineering piece about a current project that maybe wasn't contemplated before is a great piece. I would, in your comments that come in, the timing piece strikes me based on the conversation today. Some of the requests that are coming in or are suggested for clarifications or clarifying inconsistencies, is there additional reports? Um, a manager can't plan for that, or a board member, a volunteer can't plan for that to, I can anticipate there will be a question Friday morning between 11:30 and 12. Usually they're tied up with other obligations. So again, some of the solutions you might suggest for that about how we handle the issue, that the simple fact that managers are busy and volunteer board members probably, may otherwise be occupied with work or school or whatnot. And then we've got this time pressure of the sale. So how we try and balance that. So any suggestions or solutions you might have there, I think would be really helpful too.
All right. I think we're going to go ahead and end it there. Feel free to get in touch with myself or with Hugh if you have anything further that's not covered in the survey that you'd like to share with us. And again, thank you all so much for giving us your time today and your thoughts and your perspective. This was a really valuable meeting, and this is something we're going to continue to work on as a chapter. So I look forward to more discussion in the future.
Thanks, everybody. This was really good.